Hi, well today we're going to look at the Virtual Boy. Specifically if you've got a Virtual Boy that's damaged or doesn't work, or the lenses are packed up, which is a common favourite of this particular model of system. It's getting on now, so the ribbon cables that connect the LEDs to the main circuit board are now failing. So you've got a couple of choices really. I'm going to show you the couple of choices that you've got. I suppose you've got three choices really, because you could throw it in the bin. But the first option is to repair the lens ribbons. This is the most common form of repair. There are people now like Will's Console Mods. He developed a replacement ribbon cable which will allow us to repair this lens. The problem with the original lens was they didn't solder it on, they glued it on. A strange choice, I know, but hey ho, that was the technology of the day, and I suppose they had costs or things maybe to consider, I don't know. First things first, we've got to get rid of the old flex and get rid of the glue and all of the bits that were on the original board, because we can't solder on our nice new flex cable with all the glue and muck that's still there. So all we've got to do really is go over with the soldering iron, tin the pads, which helps lift the glue. So use some IPA to basically go over it with a soldering iron, melt it all in and pick up the glue and the residue with the cotton bud, and then go over it again. I'm just removing it. They also put a little bit of silicone sort of sealer that glued the ribbon on as well, so just trimming that off. So this is the Will's Console Mods replacement ribbon cable. Really very easy to fit. I've been very impressed with this. I definitely think this is probably one of the best solutions on the market at the moment for repairing it. So first things first, we've got to prep the ribbon cable. What I mean by that is we're just going to tin all the little gold-plated terminals on there. Just a very, very small amount of solder required. We don't want to put too much, because we definitely don't want to be bridging any of those contacts. So plenty of flux, and just draw your soldering iron over, just in a sweeping action, just to gently coat every single one of those little connections with a very small amount of solder. Because we've also tinned the main circuit board as well, the LED circuit board as well, so that'll be great. We'll just marry the two up. So once I'm happy with that, we can bring in the board again. Now we just have to make sure we've got the right orientation. So this is the correct orientation for it, because it will go on either way, so you have to make sure it'll go on either way onto the LED, but it won't go on the other way onto the actual Virtual Boy motherboard. So I'm just checking that I've got the orientation right to the original. I'm just using these just to prop up the board. It's a little bit wobbly, so even though I've tacked on the new replacement ribbon, I'm just trying to go over it and make sure everything's really nicely seated and that. I wanted to make sure it was secure and a bit easier to get to. So I do recommend something like this, just to help you orientate it and hold it down so it's not moving around too much. So what I'm doing is I'm just using some tweezers just to gently hold the ribbon down, because what it was doing, as it heats, these ribbons tend to lift. So what I'm doing is I'm just gently holding the ribbon down while I draw the soldering iron over it, just to keep it all in place and press down as I bring it over. So this is just my first pass. I'm just gently going through there. I probably could have stopped here, but I wanted to really make sure I've got a nice connection. So loads of flux, just so it keeps the separation of the connections really well, and a nice gentle pass over there. Got the iron set to about 300, so nothing too major. Once you've inspected your work, as you can see, I'm really pleased with that. These are a phenomenal replacement, really nice and easy to fit. Literally takes about 3 or 4 minutes of each one. What I did decide to do, just to a little bit of strength, don't know really, it doesn't really require it, but I just thought I'll put a bit of Captain tape on the back, just to add a little bit more strength, stop any flexing as much as possible on that actual joint itself. This isn't required, it's not a recommendation, it was just something I wanted to do. Then when you're finished, give everything a little clean up with a cotton bud and some IPA and pop it back into your Virtual Boy. And there we have it. Worked first time, crystal clean image, really impressed with it. Saved this Virtual Boy from the bin, so really pleased with that. Okay, so what do you do if that's not an option? And I do have a Virtual Boy where the actual LED array is dead, and there are holes in the image that's being produced, even though I did perfectly repair it and perfectly did it absolutely fine. I did some research and I saw that you could consolize the Virtual Boy. So what that involves is printing a 3D case or buying a 3D printed case and finding all these parts, a dead Virtual Boy and the virtual tap. Obviously that's the most needed part. Now the virtual tap is a thing that takes the video and allows you to display it out to the rest of the world. This is the servo emulator. Because you are removing the mirrors and the vibration motors and things that operate and give you the 3D effect, you need to fool the Virtual Boy's motherboard into believing that they're still there. And this little AT-Tiny chip and board that's been developed is designed to fool the Virtual Boy into thinking the servo motors and everything's still there. So you buy a standard little AT-Tiny, I think it was a 20. You flash it with the firmware that is on Vertex website. I did have a lot of problems with this. The actual Vertex software didn't work. I had to use, there is actually on the GitHub website that I will have listed, that does have the modified firmware that you can put onto this AT-Tiny. You have to change the configuration of the fuses. As you can see a bit earlier on, just a minute ago, I did go into the config and turn off one of the fuses, which changed it to an E2. That is most important. I did balls up there and didn't do that and didn't understand why my first generation servo emulators didn't work. Not only was I using the original firmware which didn't work, I was also not setting the fuses. So pay attention there when you're doing that you get those 2 bits right, and the servo emulator then will work. So once you've got the chip programmed, you pop it onto these boards. I got these boards again on the Vertex website. There is the Gerbil files that allow you to get these boards printed. I sent them off basically to PCBWay, and they took about 2 weeks to come back to me in the UK. So once you get these boards, obviously you can solder on the AT-Tiny in the correct orientation. The solder mask does tell you which way to put the chip round, so it's pretty foolproof, so there's no problems there. Once you've got the chip soldered on, like I say, it's only 8 pins, so it's nothing particularly complicated. There is a capacitor on the board, and it's 0.1 microfarad. Now I worked that out to be 100 nanofarads, so that needs to be popped in place on the other side of the board. So here I've got one of these cheap and cheerful little sample booklets that gives you, a selection of different ceramic capacitors, and just so has it that it has the right. They have to be 50 volt as well, and that's what the instructions state. So that's what I've gone for. Tiny little capacitor, very fiddly, so I've had to be quite careful just soldering it on there. And basically that's just on the input line, on the power input to this chip. I'm not sure if it needs to be that smaller capacitor, but I'm just following the instructions obviously that have been laid out by Vertex in his instructions. It was quite difficult to find that capacitor's rating. I searched for, maybe I was being thick, I don't know, but I seemed to have to search for quite a while to find out what the capacitance of it was. I did put a 10 microfarad on it, and I thought that was why it didn't work, but then I later realised that I'd obviously put the wrong firmware on, and in conjunction it was a bit of a perfect storm really. I think I bought the wrong AT-Tiny. Well, I'm not sure if I did or I didn't, but the AT-Tiny that I bought I didn't think was the right one. The firmware that I put on it was obviously the wrong one, and I wasn't setting the fuses as well, so it pretty much got no chance of working. But once you get the servo emulator working, then it's over to the controller board. Now that is the trace for power, the earth, sorry, the bigger trace is for the earth, and this one is for the power line. So that's where your 9 volts goes in. You use a Sega Mega Drive, original Mega Drive Genesis power pack, 9 volt. All I did was modify the jack on the end and made it bespoke to it. So just need to solder these wires in to get earth and power to the Virtual Boy from the power jack. Only takes a moment just to replace the earth connection and then obviously the power connection as well. This is really the easiest way to get, this is where the power would have come in. Obviously the original Virtual Boy powered from the batteries that were in the controller itself. So this is where the power would have come in naturally on the original Virtual Boy. So this tends to be where you're told to pick the power up and, and bring the power into the Virtual Boy. So I'm just following the instructions. This one's the audio board. Now it's nicely described. You've got left there on the top. So you can see that the left hand pin next to the P3 is the main earth, and then the other pin is the sound, and this is right, and again you've got earth and sound. They come from out the board via 3 wires. You use earth obviously as between the two. This is the virtual tap, me just soldering wires into the virtual tap, getting that ready to put into the system. The virtual tap delivers its signal straight to 2 options. You can have like a NES jack, or you can have a VGA output. I opted for a VGA in this instance. So this is it inside the 3D printed case. So it all looks quite nice. It's been well designed. Everything does fit very well. This is the first time I installed it into this case, and unfortunately this was the time where I hadn't really tested it, and I realised that it didn't boot. Now it didn't boot because I hadn't done the servo emulator properly, so that's why obviously it didn't work at this stage. Just looking around the system, we're looking, there's the power jack. Power comes from the power jack into the switch, out of the switch down to the LED. From the LED it comes round front of the board and into the joystick connection, and the power board, the power board there that goes into that connection I've just shown you. Earth follows the same route down into that mud board there. So that's the LED there. Next to it is the audio board. There's the audio jack, the LED and the palette switch. That's the palette switch that connects to the Virtual Boy to give you different colours. Power goes into the main board there. That's where the servo emulator Mark II goes. Obviously that's the controller port and your link cable. They're all still intact on this mod. You've then got the audio jack out, stereo that is, from the audio board there. It goes into the back board. Next to it is the VGA out. Standard connection VGA, nothing special on that connection. Then we've got the virtual tap, which connects basically, most of it goes basically to the VGA out. So there's the servo emulator just hiding underneath the cart. I'm just powering it up off a bench power supply just to see if it actually boots this time before I put it all together. At this point I didn't know that I actually had any video out. I just wanted to see if the actual thing would boot. And the reason you know that is I've just connected that little speaker up and I can actually hear it playing the game, so we know it's booting okay in that respect. So here's the finished article all back together. Got Mario Tennis in there at the moment. So I'm really pleased with the case. It's one that I just downloaded. It works really well. Castlevania game sticker, that's where the virtual tap did come from. Took them a while to get it, but I did eventually get it. That's just playing on a handy VGA monitor. My Flash Boy Plus, nice handy little unit there for just loading ROMs onto. Bit of Space Invaders. So this is just pressing the palette switch on the Virtual Boy, just to show you that the different modes that you can go through. It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's not something that I feel that would have been important, but it is quite a nice touch to be able to just choose what display you want. So there's the finished article. Really pleased with how that's gone. It saved a Virtual Boy components. I feel that stuff's not gone to waste, even though the main body was dead. I think now it's got another lease of life. So I'm capturing this. Took me a few goes to get a capture device that would actually capture the image out. It goes through an OSC and a FrameMeister to be able to capture some of these images. So just going through the palette selection there, just so it's a bit easier for you to see what actually goes on when you touch the button. So it's nice to be able to play this. Obviously you've not got the 3D effect, but it's nice to be able to play some of these titles without, the Virtual Boy was a machine that I could only probably play for 5 to 10 minutes anyway. I did start to get a headache and some motion sickness from it. So it was a machine that I understand why it didn't do particularly great, but this gives you the opportunity to go through some of the library and some of the mods that have been done for that library that have been really cool, and it's nice to give it a lease of life. And I say it saves it from the bin, which is really cool. I can't thank the designer Furtek enough for going through this and designing this feature, because it is an unusual, oddball design. It's not a system that was ever going to do particularly well. It is such a shame, because I think when you do play the Virtual Boy, you realise how good it actually was. So a little bit of Star Wars now, an unusual title. This is obviously far better on the 3D effects. The actual Virtual Boy itself, it does play a lot better than it does now. The way this orients, you can't quite see the way it plays. There is a 2D version of this in the actual cart, and it is a lot easier to play than this particular version. But I'm really chuffed. This has been a long time coming. It took me well over a year to get this Consolized Virtual Boy up and running and get the parts needed to be able to make it work. So I'm really pleased with the final result. I'm really proud to have this added to my collection. But if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next video. Bye for now.